Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /askreddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Which punishment, either real or imagined, sounds light or not a big deal at first, but it's actually horrific to experience? Being forced to keep your arms up all the time. Listening to the same song on loop, then skipping parts of the song. This was a form of torture used by the CIA and it's absolutely awful. Kneeling on grains of uncooked rice. Getting away with a crime by pleading insanity. Instead of a definite custodial sentence you get an indefinite custodial sentence. In an underfunded and terrifying medical facility. Maybe for the rest of your life. Yay. Tickling. No joke, the Nazis used this as a form of torture in some cases. It doesn't leave a mark, so it's also used in environments like mental facilities where patients may be restrained and staff go on a power trip. Extreme cases can result in incontinence, vomiting and a loss of consciousness due to the inability to breathe. It's also easier for the torturer to do it for a long time without it wearing away at their conscience because the victim is involuntarily laughing, so it's easy to pretend that it's not that bad. Closing your hand around a chunk of saltwater ice and holding it there. Dubbed the Salt and Ice Challenge, where people hold onto it for as long as they can stand, it can lead to frostbite injuries similar to second and third degree burns. It also essentially fuses to your skin, so if you try to open your hand it will rip off skin. You need to use warm water to detach it. I did this about 20 years ago, before it was a thing on social media. It sucks. Isolation. There's a reason solitary confinement is considered a form of torture. The human mind isn't designed to function in an environment devoid of stimulation or social interaction. Painting rocks. A couple of guys in my 8th unit got in trouble. The sadistic drill sergeant tried being creative with an approved punishment which was painting rocks. As dumb as a punishment it is, the sadistic side was that this training unit was in southern Arizona during peak summer temperatures. The rocks were literally hot enough to fry an egg on and both privates' hands ended up being covered with second-degree burns. The drill sergeant faced pretty heavy administrative action. I don't recall exactly what, but it probably one of the most severe I had ever heard a drill sergeant receive. Chinese water drop torture. Victims were strapped down so that they could not move, and cold or warm water was then dripped slowly onto a small area of the body, usually the forehead. The forehead was found to be the most suitable point for this form of torture because of its sensitivity. Prisoners could see each drop coming, and after long durations were gradually driven frantic as a perceived hollow would form in the center of the forehead. When visiting Africa, we learned that some places have their own form of lethal injection for criminals, by snakebite. Rapists and murderers would be forced to receive a bite on both ankles from a puff adder. After officials verified the bites, they'd be sent home, under supervision, to spend their last days with their family. Some people thought it sounded like a more humane form, but it's not. When I was around 10 years old, being forced to stand in the corner of the living room with my parents and siblings in the room and stare at the wall for hours. I'm stretching the definition of light here by a long way. But when I heard of death by 1,000 cuts I thought I would be someone giving you a bunch of cuts until you bleed out. Painful, bit extreme, but the reality is so much worse. Turns out cuts is a bit of a mistranslation, and it should really be slices. The executioner slices big chunks off your body systematically, up to muscles and whole limbs, with the aim of keeping you alive as long as possible. There are a handful of pictures of the process being done which are just about the most horrific thing I've ever seen. Waterboarding. If any of you kids don't know, this was a big debate back in the early 2000s. Some people were calling it torture, others were more or less like it's literally just pouring water on someone's face. What's the big deal? Now, when you put it like that, yeah, what's the big deal? Take someone, make them lay down and hold them down so they can't move, pour water on their face. What's the big deal? I remember one conservative radio host got the bright idea to prove live and on the air that it's not as bad as they are saying by having his staff waterboard him on air. And you know what, I respect this guy for doing this. He had a strongly held belief and he was willing to go through it to try and prove his point. He lasted all of 15 seconds before he tapped out of it, hacked and coughed for about 5 seconds, and finally managed to say definitely torture before suggesting they go to a break so he can recover from that. Good on him for admitting he was wrong. My cousin, Tenyo, quite agile, never sits still. Once he troubled my aunt so much that she punished him. His punishment was to sit still on the bed and do nothing. No TV, no playing either on phone or with his toys, not even speaking, no one was allowed to come to his room so that he even can't watch others. He asked her to read his textbook as he thought studying would lessen her anger, but she denied even studying. He had to sit completely still. Initially, that punishment seemed quite simple to me, but what impact it had on a small child was huge. This punishment tortures you by boring you, which a small child can't take. At last he broke down crying, after which he was pardoned. White room torture. Everything white, tasteless, no sound, room temperature kept at body temperature, if I remember correctly, just a bed, toilet, water and food, nothing that could be used in any way to alleviate the boredom. It doesn't seem that big at first, just nothing to do for a while, but it's in truth some of the worst torture one can experience. It's kinda lost its sting from overexposure. But crucifixion is one of the most agonizingly deaths humankind has ever come up with. Just the muscle cramps alone from staying in one position for hours is enough to put it in the running. And the constant near strangulation competing with the pain from the nails is probably the main draw. Time. People underestimate the impact of duration of a sentence. In the US, it's not uncommon to hear in the news that someone received a 1-year sentence for such and such crime, and thinking, wow, that's so short, they'll be out in no time. The numbers just seem so abstracted we forget just how vast even a single year is. Even for minor offenses, something like 30 days can be quite large. Imagine the impact on a person for having their life interrupted for an entire month. That will cost most people their jobs. Sentence durations are pretty arbitrary, and many of them are just the way they are because historically that is the duration that was expected. Any changes are relatively minor. The truth is that modern sentences in the US are among the longest in the world and disproportionately large. Has anyone seen that Black Mirror White Christmas episode? Imagine being locked in a room with nothing. Like, really nothing. And all you have is endless boredom. That's horrifying. Mom saying she is not mad at you, just disappointed. That farm pit punishment they used to use in Eastern Europe. Where the criminal is made to stand in a pit on a hog farm for a day, which starts out empty, but then the hog manure pours in with them as the hogs produce it. I'm always shocked by the number of people who consider it better than jail, etc. when it's brought up, just because it's only a day. Since you said imaginary, there was a punishment shown on Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, that Black Mirror copied a couple times, and science fiction has used as a concept, likely before DS9. The concept is time dilation, the idea that time takes place at a different rate in the real world than it does in some other. So for the punishment, the character Miles O'Brien was strapped in a chair for an hour and sedated, and he dreamed he served a 10-year prison sentence. Or maybe it was longer, but in his mind, he was trapped in this cell for years and years. In the dream, he may have been deprived of food, he was definitely deprived of social interaction, but at the end of it, he woke up, and only an hour had passed. Actually, the best Next Generation episode, The Inner Light, played with time dilation as well. Same with the best Voyager episode, Blink of an Eye. Goat licking. In medieval times you would get your feet strapped between two wooden boards and they'd be sprinkled in salt, or similar, so animals, mainly goats, would lick them. Seems like it'd tickle at first, but they won't stop licking. Apparently they'd lick flesh off until they hit bones. That is it for today. What punishment would be the worst in your opinion? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.